Hello, lovely violas. Welcome back to the virtual Benedetti sessions. This is now your third and final video on Ralph Vaughan Williams's Fantasia on a theme of Thomas Tallis. And today we are going to look in particular at the chordal sections of this music. And at the end, we'll also touch on Corinna and how to practice with her and how to always keep that flexibility and nuance in our practice and our sound so that we can adjust to someone that's conducting us, even if they are just on a screen. So to start with, I would just like to talk about this section, or these chordal sections, particularly the one at C in our music. So you'll notice, I'm sure, that structurally this is the same music that we had 5 bars after A, that incredibly intimate chant that we got to play with the cellos. And here at C, it's exactly that music, but instead of being an intimate chant sung by perhaps a small group of monks, it's expanded into like an organ. If you can just imagine an organ in an enormous cathedral who has literally pulled the stops out, and that's where that saying comes from, and I love that. He's literally pulled the stops out, and we now have the same musical material, but kind of in technicolor. And it's sort of an extraordinary thing to do, to hear and to play. So we need to think about our right arms as being the most important things, because what we need more than anything is to get these wooden boxes of ours resonating with as much sound as possible. We need to fill that cathedral. We have to be the cathedral. And equally, something that really helps us free our right arm is to not worry too much about the left. I get this myself, and I'm sure I'm not alone. If we feel uncomfortable and awkward about our left hands, that can often inhibit the freedom of our right. So as well as strengthening the ideas that we have to control and do as much as we can for our right arms, I also want to look into how to sort a few problems with the left, but essentially at the end of the day to keep reminding you, don't panic too much about the left hand in this music, okay? The most important and prioritized thing should be your right. So with that in mind, let's just talk about letter C, just thinking about our right arms to start with. So with our bows, we're thinking of sort of, to put it in kind of boring terms, the economy of our bows. So we're saving and spending bow speed, and that is so crucial in this music. So things like the tenuto chord, 4th bar of C, when we have this thing, 2, 3, we have to grade it. So we start with the breaking of the chord, and then we have a very slow bow speed, and then we have the crescendo, which we speed up and use more bow hairs, come nearer the bridge, so we can kind of totally sort of bloom, as it were, into the next bar. But we'll get onto that. So number 1, saving and spending the economy of bow. Brilliant. Number 2, which is obviously related, is the speed of bow. So things like the 5th bar of C, when we have stuff like this, playing the lower line now. With that kind of stuff, with the tenuto marks, we don't need to use very much bow at all. We can use quite a kind of compact amount of bow, because we want to, partly because we want to save it for when it gets louder, but also because it helps with that tenuto kind of stickiness in the string if we use a bit less bow there. Great. Number 3, we now want to think about how we spread chords when we get them, the speed at which we spread them, whereabouts in the bow we spread them, basically like the technique of how to spread a chord. And for that, or how not to spread a chord. So for example, how not to spread a chord could be somewhere like the 2nd bar of C. I didn't go. You notice there was a big difference between those two. We need those chords there to be totally kind of one gorgeous strength that our bows can achieve just in those strokes. Unlike somewhere like 5 before D, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the top line. That kind of thing, where you really could do with a bit more of a spread. So we'll talk about that in due course. But first of all, can we just play the whole thing? It doesn't matter if you're playing the top line or the bottom. This is a great thing to practice without any left hand at all. So we can just have our left hand sort of floating above the string just to remind us where we have to go, but don't press your fingers down. So that would go something like this. I'm sure you do. That's a fabulous, fabulous exercise when you have anything, really, it doesn't really matter what, even if it's not chordal, just to really get your bow thinking about the angles it's got to be at, really sort of really economical things like how much bows we need to spend in order to do the bowing that we want to do, that sort of stuff. And then to sort of balance out the universe, let's do exactly the same things in reverse. So now we only want to think about our left hand, so we can put our bows down, and let's just, with quite a firm left hand, so we have more of a chance to actually hear the notes that we're, can you see, if you have a nice amount of kind of weight as your fingers plop down on the strings, a bit like piano hammers, dong 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 dong, then we can actually hear the notes we're sort of putting down. So 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Basically, just go through like that, thinking about the shapes, the position that we're going from one to the next. If there's one that feels uncomfortable, oscillate between the two and just familiarise your hands to get into that sort of feeling of it. You could even try pitsing it rather than playing it. So. However you can think of to just help solidify in a calm and separate way to your right hand, the better. Brilliant. Okay, let's now just quickly talk about what appassionato means. So I'm sure it means different things to everyone, but to me, the difficulty I have with appassionato personally is that whenever I play something that I feel kind of impassioned about, sometimes my technique kind of goes out the window because I'm just busy kind of trying to express myself, and I need to just sometimes just take stock and be a bit more objective and centered and think about, actually, my viola and my body could service my intentions for this music a lot better if I could just consolidate technically what I want to achieve with the sound. A simpler way of doing that is simply to say, let's just calm down, lower the temperature and approach this music from a more technical, and I hate to say it, but cold way first. And then when we're more comfortable and happy with that, we'll just be able to turn on the emotion and that kind of heat inside you, and it will kind of hopefully marry up really nicely. So appassionato as well, of course, means impassioned. So we're talking kind of churning sounds. Nothing is ever still. It's constantly searching for the next thing in this sort of rhapsodic way. And the sound that we need to make has to be incredibly lustrous and warm. No pressing if we can possibly help it. We just need to get as much natural resonance from our instruments as we can. And that brings us nicely back round to how we use our bows. So something I thought I could maybe usefully do is almost talk you through what's going on in my mind as I play, say, the top line here from C. So at letter C, I'm on a down bow, and I want this to be a pianissimo kind of waiting sound. So I'm going to have a relatively fast bow speed, and I want to get to the tip so that I have loads of bow for my up bow crescendo coming up next. So here we go. 2, 3, 1. Save and spend. It's actually really hard to talk and play this at the same time. So just going back, then bar 2. That stuff. My number one thought actually that time was string crossings to make a really smooth, almost playing the B natural and D like a double stop itself. 2, also thinking then in the third bar of how I'm putting the sound into the string. So. In that difficult bar, 4 before D, when we have the fourths and the fifths, I was trying as much as possible not to stress about my left hand and to just try and open up my right. That time it was vaguely successful. It could be even better. If you're finding that bar, 4 before D, difficult for intonation, because it's a fourth and a fifth, it's really kind of grim, you are allowed, in my book, to drop that second C if you want. So rather than going, you can just go, as long as we hear. That is a really important expressive line, and the same goes for the lower one. If this is too difficult, just worry about the top line and drop again the C. You have my permission. Don't tell anyone. Now, yes, where were we? So this is back. Now we're up to 3 before D. Save and spend. Save and spend again. Now, when we get to D, this is even more rhapsodic if it's possible to have even more space. So I was trying to use more bow and breathe. So here we go. Now, third of D, it's kind of coming in from underneath. Can you feel that? So I wanted a bit more of a sort of under the radar sort of sound and lots of vibrato to warm it up. Save and spend. There we go, very nice. And now the next two bars in the 6/8 are quite tricky because there's loads of double stops and it moves quite fast. So in slow motion, I'm going to not worry too much about my left hand. What I really want to think about there is the melody line. So that's this. So the first bar is just stating something, and the second bar is like re-emphasizing that thing. So let's put those chords back in. Something like that. I apologise for my slightly dodgy intonation at times. I was thinking as much as possible about the freedom of my bow, the sort of the pragmatic distribution things, the speed things, the contact, the speed of my chords, and where that movement was coming from in my body. That's a really good one to think about. For notes that are repeated, so for example, when they're repeated in one bow, letter D, we have this. And what we need is the sostenuto tenuto feeling. So I'm not slowing them. And I'm not going. It's a kind of combination somewhere in the two. It's this kind of sausage factory situation. I was giving a little bit of kind of a bit of a banana or a sausage for the first, just the shape of the first one. So still within the same bow, but you just have to, as I'm sure you all can do beautifully, lighten and then reapply that second banana further up the bow, if you see what I mean. So that is a lovely tenuto-y kind of bowing. And then for the top line people, it's exactly the same technically. In bar 2, so the second bar of C, we've got. It's exactly the same thing, more sausage factories there. And make sure that we don't rush ever up a crescendo, that we always have a nice breadth and expansion going up. Now I noticed for myself during those little examples that I have a bad tendency to do something called pronating too much. Pronating, for those of you who don't know, is the difference between a hand shape like this, nice and straightforward on the bow, and one which is totally valid and brilliant sometimes, slightly angling a little bit more to get that sort of weight in the string. It just helps. It's actually super useful. We need to do it quite often. This helps getting a little bit more pressure and weight into the string. But what I was doing was I was not using my body to my best advantage. I was pressing too much with my first finger and not getting enough weight from my back and my upper arms. So we need to just think even more. Well, I need to think even more about that. And if you guys could also think about it too, that would be lovely as well. So I promised at the beginning of this video that we would touch on how to rehearse with Karina and that sort of the flexibility that we need when we follow a conductor. So I'm sorry I've left it to the very end of this video, but I want you to all spend a lot of time watching Karina's Vaughan Williams Rehearse with Karina video. I have learnt such a lot about what she wants from this piece, and also therefore it makes me examine what it is that I want from the piece too, whether I agree with her or not. How we can understand her movements better. So that's what this is all about. So A, watch that video. Now B, go to the play along with us video that she's talking about, and I would suggest that what you should do is, first of all, watch it maybe 3 times with the sound off. Okay, so mute the video and just watch her, and in your head, because you hopefully you've been playing this now so beautifully in your practice and hopefully listening to recordings so much that you should more or less be able to hear it in your head without looking at your music. If you can't, that's fine. Look back and glance and try and keep an eye on her at the same time. But ideally, you want to be watching her and singing in your head what your part is and allowing for the flexibility as you go, just in your mind. Then step 2 is to get your instrument out. And what we can do there is have her right in our sort of on our screens, nice and big. Have your music right in front of the screen so you're not having too many awkward angles. Feel free to make markings on your music, places where she slows down, places where she seems to want you to go forward. Do use your pencil. Then we can get our instruments out and play along with her as well. So a place that I found particularly difficult was after X, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bars. After X, the tranquillo there, this bit. That's a really, really fabulous spot to watch her and practice that in particular, okay? A quick side note since we're there. Let's do it all on the C string. That's the fingering that I would use. So we want lots of lovely fast bow over the fingerboard, that kind of smoky, gorgeous sound, okay? Use her videos, use your ears, your eyes, any sense that could possibly be in your service. And yeah, have an amazing time making your recordings, everybody. If you have any questions, please do leave me a comment under these videos. And I'll do my best to answer them. You can also hashtag Benedetti Sessions, and there we will collate everyone's questions and then come up with little answer videos that might hopefully help you. But essentially, I can't wait to hear what everyone's been doing, and I look forward to seeing you guys at the next Zoom sectional, if you're coming. All right, take care. Bye, everyone.